We are the one, the light in the dark. One heart, one world, one spark. We are the one, together we rise. One dream, one voice, one sky.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Women Empowered Across the World. And this is our podcast. And I have another podcast host on with me, Jackie Zaccoli. She's in Arizona, but her heart is global. And she plays with me in Africa, in a lot of different countries in Africa. And I'm Carol Witt, and I am the founder and the director for YEA Global, and we just went into 57 countries. And I teach a thriving mindset that we all deserve to thrive. And mindset, it is the biggest deal. And we have our guest, Lisa Lundy. And guys, just get ready. She has a very inspiring story. She's up to a lot of things. And we're going to bring her on, and she's going to share her story with us. Thank you, Lisa. Come join us.
Okay. Do you want me to just dive right in?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I have some key points that I want to bring up and talk about in areas of mental health and emotional health that we're not talking about, much to my disappointment and surprise. So I have a lifetime of trauma, and I did not even know that I had trauma until late in life when I got kicked out of therapy. And I was like, what? Because I had so many my functioning score, the GAF score, was 91 to 100. That means no matter what happens in life, I function. Well, I didn't even know there was a global assessment of functioning test or score because I'm not a therapist. So, despite having a lifetime of trauma and betrayal and abuse, I've had a very functional life, which in 2022, I was doing podcasts. So I have mental and emotional happiness podcasts, 230 a library, YouTube videos, online content. It's all free. You don't have to sign up. You don't have to register. You don't have to provide anything. And in 2022, amidst this online creation, I got selected by Newsweek to be one of their experts. They had an expert forum pool. Yes. Well, because I'm not a licensed therapist, I get this email announcing that they're inviting me to join from their selection committee, chairman, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, oh, they don't know what they're doing. Why in the world would they invite me? Right? Like, what is up with that? And come to find out that I had and have mental and emotional health skills that are rare and unusual by the grace of the universe, by the grace of God, by whoever you believe in. So I've had a lifetime of trauma. I have all this online content, and not my badge of honor, but in this process, in this lifetime, I saved the life of a child that was deemed by multiple specialists as not savable. In other words, they weren't given a 1% chance of survival, of 5%. There was zero chance for survival. And even though I heard them, I, you know, when you have that kind of situation, they're very like you don't forget it. So I went about going to the medical library and calling doctors that this child wasn't a patient, like crazy, crazy stuff. They survived. Their health was presented at an international conference a decade ago, roughly, as being the only child they know of from America to survive. And they're still alive, a decade later. And there's like the kids who have this particular, there's an umbrella of diagnostic diseases. They're all fatal. And this child did not have mental health problem, like no cognitive issues. If they walked into a room, you would say, no, not that child. That's not the adult who had that health history. So I have this wide berth of completely unusual experiences, which have shaped and informed my content, including something that I don't frequently talk about, which is my escaping domestic abuse and severe economic abuse and high level electronic stalker, and it goes on and on. And despite all of it, I am just like I'm one of the happiest people that people typically meet, and people can't understand it. If, however, you look at the content that I provide, then you would understand. And so you, Carol, are about the growth mindset, which is pivotal, it is foundational, it is critical. And then I have all these other skill sets and attitudes and beliefs and things that are important. So that gives you kind of like some little glimpse at, my kind of background, which is, I could go on and on and on, but it doesn't really matter, because this is not about me. What this is about what we can do together in the world to create happiness, love, mental health, and wellness. So I have 10 key issues I want to bring up, but before I do, I want to talk about why would I have been picked by Newsweek and what's different about my content, because that took me over a year to sort out. Because I did not feel like asking a VP of Newsweek, hey, why'd you pick me? Hey, I tailored my questions for the VP to be VP kind of questions, which is not about me. So one of the things about my content is, even though I'm not a licensed therapist, so we have 230 podcasts, 100 YouTube videos, pages and pages, all this content, is that even though I'm not a licensed therapist, my content has been evaluated and assessed by multiple therapists and multiple MDs or physicians. They're not, MD, DO, ND, and found to be research-based and therapy-proven techniques. So unilaterally, I finally had the last therapist said, listen, you can have 100 more therapists look at your content. We're all going to say the same thing. So that's number one. Number two is rational thinking. And we don't talk about rational thinking out in the world. There's a high amount of non-rational thinking or cognitive distortions. And when someone is pontificating or providing advice and coaching, and their thinking is irrational, that means their viewpoint is flawed. And this is very significant because we have people who are quote unquote out there and quote unquote doing pretty well, who, if you understand cognitive distortions, it is screaming out they have black or white thinking or all or nothing thinking or this or that or whatever. So my thinking has been designated as rational, and that may be unusual and rare, but that's important. The two other things that differentiate my content is the other third one would be that everything I do is based in love. I am so profoundly grateful that despite all this trauma, despite all the abuse, despite all the betrayal, I have lived a life full of love. And I bring love wherever I go. Thank you. Because love is what matters, and it makes a difference. And love and affection, platonic love and affection. And so that is woven into all of my content because it's important to me and it's part of who I am. And the last thing that differentiates my content from what's out there is my willingness to be authentic and tell the truth, which does not always make you popular. And I know that sometimes people will listen to my podcast and they will get angry. And the reason they're angry is because I really call them out without calling them out on something that they do. And people don't like that. They like to be validated. They like to be told you're doing great. And I'm not telling people they're not doing great. I'm about, let's look inward. Let's see, where can we grow and develop? So those are the 4 key points about what's different with my content, which dovetails into Newsweek at the time when they were looking for experts. They were looking for the 5 to 10% who are thought leaders and innovative thinkers. So now I'd like to switch to like some of the top areas we are not talking about in mental health and mental wellness, because the talking about them will make a difference. So I don't know if you'd be surprised about this, Carol and Jackie, but as of 2019, which has not changed as far as I can tell, in the world, we have not one agreed upon definition for what constitutes good mental health. We have 8 conflicting definitions about what constitutes good mental health, but we don't have one definition. We can agree on psychopaths, we can agree on borderline personalities, we can agree on areas of mental illness, but we do not have any agreement on what constitutes good mental health. And to me, that's a little troubling. That's what I won't even get into all the reasons, but that I think it's important for people to know that. Number 2, in the world where we stand in 2025 is we live in a world where, last I checked the statistic, 85% of the population has low self-esteem. And that's a problem. That drives a lot of things, which we won't talk about right now, but I'm just saying. And the other segue or part of that is that we live in a world where emotional intelligence is very low. It is rare to have high emotional intelligence. There's lots of benefits, and we can talk about that later. But this is not an indictment of the world. This is just what's so. Like, what is the truth? Well, the truth is, I could never find any research piece that disputed that 85% of the population has low self-esteem. That's agreed upon. There are other things where we haven't agreed, like we can't agree on what good mental health is, but we have low emotional intelligence, low self-esteem, and those things are problems. The other thing that's very interesting to me and a problem is that when you process your emotions, according to the research, this is PubMed. When I say research, I mean PubMed research. I mean the government-approved repository or warehouse of research, not what Joe Blow or Susie Smith or whatever says on their website. We have your emotions are processed in your mind. That is where emotions get processed. If you Google how to manage my emotions, how to process it, you put that in whatever search engine you use. These are the top things you're going to find. If you go Google it after this podcast, punch a pillow, draw a picture, talk to a friend, cry, call somebody, go for a walk. And these are all very good things. I am not dismissing them. I'm not demeaning them. I'm not diminishing them. But these are things that you're doing outside of your mind. Now, they're helpful. There's no doubt about it. They're helpful. Yet, it doesn't make the leap of what you do in your mind. So I have on my website, I did this as a result of therapists contacting me and telling me I needed to do this. So I did a podcast on emotional processing, in which case we deconstructed how do I do it in my mind, because I didn't even know it was a thing. Here I'm getting phone calls from therapists going, you need to write this up for us. Like, you're the master and we don't know how to do this. How do you do it? And like being studied and picked apart by therapists who know about this. I don't know about this. So I have an emotional processing workbook that's free on my website with a diagram that goes about what you do in here. Because if it's not going on in here, you're not processing your emotions. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier, that distinguishes my content, but really some very deeply troubling things that we're not talking about, is the dysfunctionality in families and relationships. Particularly, I'm talking about family of origin dynamics where we get our ACE scores. So, for example, up to 80% of American young children are bullied or mistreated by their own sibling, up to 80%. That's huge. We're not saying it's 80%, but it's huge. And when you talk about this out in the world, guess what people do? Oh, that's just normal. Oh, it's just teasing. It's a minimization, but this is a problem. And when a young person finds out, oh, that's not okay. Oh, that's why I've been depressed. Oh, that's why I have anxiety. That's why I don't feel loved. It's why I feel so, like it's a huge thing. But we don't even talk about that. Economic abuse, another thing, when economic abuse as a term and as a concept becomes commonplace and ubiquitous in the world, guess what? That's the linchpin for domestic violence. And people don't recognize it because we're not talking about it. I mean, I didn't recognize it and I was in it like severe. So that would be another thing. The other couple things that I think we need to bring out is you guys understand this, Jackie and Carol. Thought precedes emotion. That's not a common understanding. People don't understand how their mind works. And that's helpful because if you want to flip your emotions, you change what you're thinking. There is a common lack of love and affection in the world. We also are lacking some very basic, I'm talking about basic psychology, like projection or gaslighting. Although gaslighting and some of the narcissistic terms are becoming more common, it's helpful for people. My big, lovely term that I would want everyone to know about is psychoneuroimmunology, which we can talk about if you'd like to, and neuroplasticity of the brain. I do have a podcast on those two topics together because it's a game changer, life changing. And the other thing I also kind of mentioned earlier is that we have people who are fairly well known, they're fairly famous, and they are saying things that are false and they are usually they're actually kind of blaming people. Like when you say, oh, you train people how to treat you, there is a little element of truth, but a young child doesn't teach their parent to abuse them. A young child doesn't isn't the cause for their sibling abuse or mistreatment. A young child who hasn't been taught assertiveness or how to manage their it's all this blame. Where in society are we teaching even children assertiveness? Because we're not. We're not teaching them the skills that would allow them to have boundaries and growth mindset and all these things, but we're blaming them because if you're abused, it's your fault. So that there are things that people are just saying that are wrong that need to stop. And lastly, if everyone was engaging in prospection, oh, that would be helpful for their mental and emotional health and wellness, but we don't do that as a rule. And since we're at early 2025, only 3% of people will set goals and write them down. Over 80% of people won't set any goals, and prospection is an area where we know the benefits. We know the psychological benefits of creating a future, which is what prospection is, but we're not commonly helping people to build that. So those are my kind of top, they're not pet peeves, they're problems. It's a problem when we look at the suicide rate and then we discover, I mean, there are parents literally in this world who have told their children go commit suicide. We're not talking about that. Oh, God forbid we talk about that. And I've met people where this is what happened. So, a little truth goes a long way. So there's kind of like a little bit about my background, and I'll let you pick away and whatever you want to talk about.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Lisa. I can't wait to go and check out your content and your YouTube and see what all you have put out there. I did not know all of that about you. I knew a little bit. That's it. And
Right.
so exciting that you are, you're taking what you've learned and you're putting it out there for other people to be able to assess and really and truly look, you gotta look,
Yeah.
look.
Yeah.
And that's what I teach is you gotta look,
Right.
and see what you're telling yourself and what's running your actions and what's
Yes.
running your processes in life.
Yes.
And that's what you're doing. So it's so perfect that you are a guest on this podcast. So I have a question for you.
Yes.
Okay, out of the things that you listed that you want us to become aware of,
Yeah.
what is the one thing that you feel like could make the biggest difference in people's mental health? What is the biggest difference? What is
Okay.
it?
Well, that's a great question, and there's lots of things, but if I had to just pick one and only one, I would say from the research, emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence has five, it's kind of because of Daniel Goleman, it's become more of a commonplace term, but people still mostly don't know what it is. They don't have it. So there's five core precepts and foundations. The first one being self-aware. Self-awareness is the foundation for emotional intelligence, and we lack self-awareness. And when you become self-aware, then you start to think about how it is you're thinking and what thoughts you're having and what are you doing and how are you interacting with other people, and it starts to boost your power. If we look at the return on investment for an institution, this could be a business, it could be a college, it could be anybody, it could be a nonprofit. The return on investment, according to the research, for emotional intelligence training is 1,484%. 1,484%, because it changes people. And emotional intelligence, in some of the models I've seen, they don't really get into this processing in your mind like I have been coached to deconstruct and provide. But even without that, it provides enough that your mental health, like when you gain skills, those are things that people can't take away from you. So as you know, when someone has a growth mindset and really distinguishes that from a fixed mindset, I mean, could they go back? Well, I suppose they could, but would they? Who would do
Who
that?
would
Like,
do
no,
it?
no, right. Who would do that?
Like,
So I would have to say I have in my content 29 traits of people who have high emotional intelligence, and they're the people you want to be around
mm,
because they're the people who are kind, they're not competitive, they're
yeah,
not judgmental, they're not righteous. They want other people to have a win. They're
yes,
the pulse of the team. They're
you,
just they're really they're authentic
yeah,
and inclusive. So I would say if I had to pick one thing, I would pick emotional intelligence with a caveat that it includes emotional processing the way I describe it, which is like the workbook that I have is free on my website. I mean, it started out as a diagram, and yeah, no, you have to write out the diagram. We don't understand that. And I'm like, oh, like, so it's been a process. We're on version like 6.0, I think,
mm,
with other versions coming because I'm deconstructing something I was never taught. And I don't have all the answers because nobody ever taught me this. And then I'm having it's my content is constantly being evaluated by licensed therapists.
mm-hmm,
And they're the ones who are saying, oh, like you need to do a podcast on this or that because we're not trained in that. But
absolutely beautiful.
so when I say emotional intelligence, I do mean with the emotional processing done in your mind.
Yeah. The other thing that I think really could make a huge difference, and you spoke about it, and that's love.
Yes.
You gotta
Well, if
have you gotta have love for
yeah,
yourself, and you gotta have love for others. And and that
yes,
definitely opens the doors to not harming others, not wanting the worst for others, wanting the
yes,
best for others. Um,
yes.
yeah. So I'm
Well, that would have
so
been if
thankful you
I
came and shared this with everyone. So, so thankful, so grateful to you being on the
thank
planet and
thank
making
you.
the kind of difference you are. Yeah. So, Jackie has a question for you. Go ahead.
It blew me away. I'm trying to assimilate everything in my brain, which is quite an experience right now. Um, Carol, can you even fathom of what I call EQ, not IQ, EQ, were incorporated in your mindset in your workshop?
Oh, yeah.
Because what you're talking about, um, Lisa, is a general population that all three of us know about, and that's what we live in the United States. I don't know where you're from. Where are you from?
Yeah, I'm in the US.
Are you in US?
Yeah.
When you talk about an underserved population of most of the world, probably, if you were to look at all the averages, and I'm not a research person. I'll tell you right now. However, from experience, this that it's even more extreme than you're talking about because of the cultural way that they are raised by tradition and belief that
Yes.
this is the way that you are to be as a person,
Yeah.
much of which a large percentage is based on survival.
Yes.
and not anything to do with norms,
Yes.
just to be able to get from point A to point B on the next day.
Yeah.
Yes.
So take everything that you've said literally and put it on steroids for a population that Carol addresses in her workshops 100% of the time.
Right.
So when we look at that population and address them, how delightful it will be to have you part of that analysis, that awareness, which is what my mantra is all about, is the excitement of awareness. I've encapsulated exactly what
Mhm.
you've
Yeah.
said in my mantra.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Exactly. Exactly. I couldn't have said it more word for word. My
Right.
mantra. My age justifies my wisdom. My developed clarity teaches the excitement of awareness and ignites the spark of action and change.
Good.
Does that say what you're talking about or
Yes.
what? I mean,
Yes.
it's as
Absolutely.
focused exactly on what you're saying. So, my biggest concept, Carol and I are joined at the hip on this global intervention to be able to bring the best resources for self sustainability into the underserved population, hoping it will expand to the served population.
Right.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
at some point we need to take your discipline and put it on steroids. We need to I agree with Newsweek completely. I hear what they're talking about. It's very obvious to me. You have a whole different perspective. So is there a question in that? I don't know. The question is sorry.
Doesn't
The
have to
the,
be.
the question the question is how do we get you into those workshops is the question. So
Well, that's a question you can handle offline another time. I think
yeah.
what's important to know is, I'm in the middle of making a transition, because one of the things I wanted to do was to kind of, and maybe working with you would help me do that. But I'm looking at um, uh, working with some people to create programs that are free, that take this out in the world for groups, starting in a college age group, but then working back. And I wasn't successful in really flushing out grants to get the grants to do the funding. So I'm looked at another way to be able to do the same thing, because it's important to me. But what you have, at least right now, at your disposal is all of the podcasts. So 203 podcasts covers like 60 problems people have in life. If they have sibling problems, family problems, parent problems, this problem, like problems. And then also Carol was talking about love, and I'm a diehard fan of love and affection. Well, I have oodles of podcasts about love, like healing your heart, growing your heart, like the Grinch, et cetera, et cetera. So you have an abundance of material that anyone can use standalone, and it's free.
Okay.
It's completely free.
Okay.
The workbook is free. All of it's free. It's all free. Just go on the website. And in the background, however I could work with you and however we could figure that out, I'm on board, because I am so lucky. I am so lucky that I survived everything I've survived, and that I'm alive, etc. And it is always the thing I wanted to do from being very young, is to help people. And
Mm.
this is a way to help
Yeah.
people. I've always been the helper. I don't mean like
Mm.
people pleaser helper. I just mean like it gives me joy
Yeah.
to help other people. And when you're helping someone so that they can then function better, or they see for themselves that they are worthy, or they're deserving, and for some people, they just need a champion. They just need
Yeah.
that one person who will stand for them and say, hey, you got this,
They need
whatever
to
it
be
is.
believed in. Yes.
That's right. That's right. So
That's-
however I can help you, I'm on board, because your mission is my mission. I'm on board for your
Oh, yeah.
mission. Don't know what it would look like, but however it looks like, if I can do it, I'm in.
Oh,
And this is,
Oh,
you
we
know, I'm
are
just,
going to collaborate, Lisa. We
Okay.
are going to
There's
somehow
another
collab.
thing that I just thought of that is
Mhm.
ingenious, and
Yeah.
it was my last week's miracle. And I still have to, I don't even think I've told Carol. Um, I have what's called the Global Impact Network, and I've told you that there are these pillars that move to that direction to the population. And I began to realize that how would this be delivered to that population in a more effective way so that they can really get their hands on it and really absorb all of these resources. So I began to try to figure that out. And what came to mind, I'm not sure exactly how it came to mind, though there are several things that could have brought it there. I first started with the concept of, gosh, if I could get this to the Peace Corps volunteers all over the world, we really could change the world, definitely. And then I began to realize, since I was in the Peace Corps, since I began to realize this is way too big an animal and there's way too much red tape and there just you could not, could not. But then I thought, wait a minute. What if there was an app that took all four pillars
Ooh. Mm.
and easily delivered them? Sure, if the Peace Corps wanted to play, that's cool. But once we bring the literacy of my Footsteps to Brilliant Gamified Literacy app, which I haven't told you about, but that's all part of it, and they know how to use an app, imagine,
Mm.
imagine. Because one of the pillars, the mental, the wellness one, is developing an app in the Kenya area for women to teach them of wellness in healthcare so that they don't
Mm.
have to go 6 hours and pray they survive to be able to get to the hospital and pray they survive when they get there. So that concept, think if we could do that for all four pillars, with the wellness one being obviously extremely effective and simple that they could imagine how. Now, I don't know if that can be
Beautiful
done,
ideas,
but
guys.
I
Beautiful ideas.
love the idea of
Mhm.
bringing it to them that way. I have at least
Absolutely.
four, I'm going to limit it to four in each of those pillars, I think, because it gets way too much. And maybe there's a membership to that and all the logistics to that. But the concept of in underdeveloped places, I don't know if that can be done. All I can do is envision it. So
Anything
what
can
do you
be
think?
done, Jackie. Anything can be
I
done.
know
You take it out of your mind, you put
that's
action
some
to it. Anything can be done.
yeah, it's
And
so practical.
we need to end our podcast.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you got me going. You
Can-
can't
I
can't
know
do that.
I can't stop you when your mind starts going, and I love it. But we do need to end our podcast, and then we can talk after.
Yeah.
So, guys, if you
Good
love
point.
these episodes, please, um, subscribe to our channel and like our content and share it. Please share it with everyone. We want people knowing that Lisa has lots and lots of content out there that's free to help them to go inside and really and truly self-reflect and see what's going on inside there and just be willing to look. Be willing to look, guys. So please come and join us again. We do these episodes on Mondays and Fridays, and we have the most amazing guests. And Lisa, you were an awesome guest today. I cannot wait to look at all of your content out there. And please, Lisa, put your
Yeah,
information in the
it's
chat so
important.
I
And
can put it up in the description in
yes,
this episode
yes,
so
very
everyone can
good.
reach out to you and go and watch your podcast and see all of the things you've got going on there. Okay. Thank you once again. And guys, we'll be back again with another amazing episode of Women Empowered Across the World. Bye, everyone.
Beautiful.
Let's all thrive together. Bye.